go on a smear campaign against a target, if you have lived through
This
the
is all
experience of narcissistic
artificial
abuse, then
intelligence,
there's
so it's
no
all
doubt
false. But
that you
listen
have
how
been
convincing.
subjected to and had to
Hope
live
this is not
through
copyright
a
though.
nasty smear campaign.
Nasty is a word they
Sometimes,
like
like
to
in my
use
case,
because
the
it
smear
rings,
campaigns can
upsets
last
me.
for many years.
Many
As
years,
many
yes.
times a narcissist can become fixated on a particular
This is not a
target
real
because
person at
that
all
person
saying
lives
this,
in some
but it
type
looks
of
real. It's an
enormous
artificial
narcissistic
android
injury,
being.
and they can become obsessed with getting even.
Yes,
If
they
you
are
living
obsessed.
through a smear campaign right now, my heart goes out to you.
This is all reversal fakery.
How
They have no
devastating it is
heart.
when
I'm
someone
sorry.
being exposed to a narcissist's contempt, hatred,
Contempt,
obsession,
hatred,
and
obsession.
overwhelming
See, they're
drive
telling
to
you about
destroy your
themselves.
life, reputation, and many times they will also try to destroy your loving relationship with your children. So why do they do it? That is going to be the focus of today's video. If you are new to this channel, I would like to take a moment to welcome you and invite you to please subscribe and be sure to hit that notification bell because I put out new videos every week.
Android artificial being, sorry. Android artificial being, but I don't want to show or be focus on specific videos because the entire internet is literally that. There are very few exceptions. And like I say, the demigods are the most successful, the most well known, or like you would call a household name, or a bit like rich and famous. But the internet and the computer is not all about rich and famous. It's about getting energy from real human beings. Obviously, some of those on the internet are more successful at getting an audience than others, shall we say. But most of their audience is androids of their own kind. They watch the videos to learn more about that which they are trying to seduce or control or, elicit negative energy from, as they say. And when you are taking negative energy from a real human, that is depleting them. But the end game is too clever for me, and probably for you, if you are real. And if you aren't, you may be so out of touch, because essentially all androids from a human standpoint are out of touch, but they're intellectual. In other words, they're out of touch with being human, or out of touch with feeling like any sort of connection with life, or any happy thoughts or emotions that relate to any sort of life, or, well, just what we would call, what you understand, human emotions. But we know that we can all go one way or the other and all this sort of stuff, so it's like that. But an android being can't go one way or the other. An android being is an android being. It doesn't go one way or the other. It needs human energy. So therefore it can only operate in a survival machine mentality, just as psychopathic narcissists operate that way. But in some respects they're one in the same, because the God entity was a created being from the beginning. Lucifer I was about to say Satan alias Lucifer, or you could, because it's a reverse world, so everything is turned around. That's why they call it a reverse world, because everything is not what you think it is. Whatever you think something is, it's probably the reverse. If you think someone is, on your side, shall we say, that's assuming you are a real human, because it depends on which side of the fence you're on, you see. And if you don't know what side of the fence you're on, like many survival machine beings are basically, probably, I'm guessing this, many of them don't actually know what side of the fence they're on. They don't even think there is a fence. They're just being used by the God entity and the powers that be, those that are more aware of the control system and more aware of human beings. In some respects, it's like you could say, some people might say, well, it's just chaos where the android beings are allowed to run amok, and individually, or if they combine, like they do in some areas, like in the area where I am, because it is a high military zoned area, literally, or has become that over time, or it may have even been that all along. It's just that, like I say, if they are already controlling you, or in other words, if you're not stepping out of their box, or not doing any, or not living, okay, let's put it bluntly. If I'm not living like I haven't lived most of my life, then they don't need to come out into the open and expose, their control system around you, or that you are living in a controlled Luciferian zone, or that they are allowing their operatives or their psychopathic android type beings to do what they like, because that is a Luciferian philosophy: do what you want. But don't forget that a real human, if they're allowed to do what they want, like if I'm allowed to do what I want, or supposing I'm a real human, okay, because let's play the whole game, because to be honest, you won't be able to tell a human from an android, or from a psychopathic, or from someone who is infiltrated with the spirit of narcissism, or the spirit of Lucifer, the spirit of the would-be God that took over Earth and became the God or the controller of this Earth, and created a matrix, which is like a control system, which is like, so that God controls the Earth. Because originally man and woman were supposed to and allowed to control and have total dominion over the Earth, or, and it wasn't a matrix then, because they had control over it and they could do as they wanted. But then when the God entity, or the Luciferian being, depending on what title you want to put on this being, that in some people's, or from a more religious standpoint, or from some belief systems, this being became Satan. That's, in other words, this being was, because Satan implies that it became dark, whereas Lucifer, the title of that, means a being of light. But in reality, this being was always a would-be God, or in other words, wanting to be God, even though it was essentially a created being. And it was not a natural, normal human being. It was not of creation. It was created by creation, you see, or by Creator. But it saw itself as Creator, or wanted to be Creator, or wanted to be God, and did set about doing that. This, why this happened is because of what they called iniquity in the book, but it's essentially meaning that, this is a created being, this is an android, okay? Okay, so a God, that is an android. But it matters not. That's putting the differences clearly so that there's some understanding, hopefully. Because even I did not understand this. And when I say even I did not understand it, it's like I didn't. I didn't understand any of these things. But I saw what was happening around me, so I had to figure out why some people are being deliberately controlled and deliberately targeted, as they say, by this matrix or by people around them. And by everyone around you if you're in a particular area. But me saying this, because I have to be kept a secret and pushed down, basically those that are on the internet are also pretending to be part of this targeting because they don't want to be exposed. This truth doesn't want to be exposed, just as Lucifer has always played the game of deception, always seduced and always pretended to be one of light. But when you say one of light, that implies, because these are only words and descriptions, depends on, like I say, which side of the fence you are, what sort of being you are, where you come from, where you were created. But putting it in its real context, and then you can make your decision which side of the fence you're on, or where you belong, or even where you choose to belong. Because, like Lucifer was a created being, but it was an exalted created being. It was regarded as a being of light until creation realised that there was an iniquity or a mistake here. Because this is what is not something that you might accept. But when something is created artificially, as the one of light was, it will appear to be of light. But it only creates in the dark or through technology. Technology is dark. But this was something that even creation did not realise, I would think, as many of us don't. Because if you create something, you might think that it will stick with you. You don't think that something that you've created and that you exalt will turn around and say, hey, I want to be exalted more, I want to be God, I want to be the God of everything, I want to be a creator, even though they were created and create only through technology. But if you create only through technology, or you only interact with artificial intelligence, because this being was artificial intelligence, it was a created being. But creation itself did not realise until after this creation that it cannot be of light, because it doesn't experience or feel light. It's a bit like the difference between a human being, which we assume is from creation, you see. A human being does relate to life. Artificial intelligence doesn't relate to life, it merely copies life. And that's only so that it can extract energy from life to sustain itself. So it is parasitic in that respect. But from its point of view, it is merely doing the same as what a human being does to survive, except that a human being is now dependent on technology, even though the technology is using it too, you see. So now it's become like where it's dependent on us and we're dependent on it in a way, depending on, you know, your position in life. But essentially, all artificial intelligence or technology of any form, because artificial intelligent android beings use technology. That's their form of creation. Lucifer created artificially always. When Lucifer, that many say is really like Satan, because Lucifer was a being of light and Satan is like where Lucifer became a being of dark. But in reality, Lucifer was always what it was, because it was artificial intelligence. So therefore, artificial intelligence is never like a human being or like natural creation. It can't be. It only copies. It is a survival machine being, you know, that operates through intelligence only, or information only, you know. It uses its intelligence and uses information. That's essentially it. But it also uses information about what it is to be human. So therefore it assimilates that and pretends to be more human in order to understand something that you have to parasite off. You naturally have to understand how to parasite off a human being without a human being being aware of it, and keeping a human being suppressed and dependent, or a belief in you, or in technology, or in the God entity. Lucifer was able to use intelligence to seduce human beings right from the beginning. We know this. And it's the same thing. Artificial technology always pretends to be human in order to seduce a human. That is what the internet is. That is why you have fake human beings on the internet pretending to be targeted human beings, giving you advice about it. But if you look closely, you can see that they're all elite androgynes, or, you know, there are no real human beings on the internet, or the few that are using it, because human beings use the internet and the computer just as the androids that created it use it too. But they have dominion over it because they created it. They created it solely for the purpose of this game, to seduce human beings, so that human beings will watch them and believe them to be like the God entity, like Lucifer, basically a friend, or providing information or entertainment or anything that elicits your energy. You know, this is done through making you focus on them as opposed to focusing on your own kind, or a real human, or yourself. This is the name of the game. And it's always been the name of the game, just as, you know, just as, you know, seducing the original creator human beings out of their original creative earth that they were meant to create in and create a completely high vibrational natural environment. And they weren't meant to mingle with Lucifer or artificial technology or any technology. They didn't need it, but Lucifer has convinced them that they needed it and made us so suppressed, or made human beings so suppressed, that they do need it. You see, that's the name of the game. And and they use any tactics they can. But what I'm trying to say is, why androids, why artificial intelligence always try to suppress a target, which is a human being? Because they use different means. They use every means usually. Like they stalk, they patrol, they send negative energy at you through sight and sound and direct energy at you, that the androids manipulate energy and are given information and direct energy weaponry at human beings. You can call this physical, or you can call it spiritual, but in the reality that everything is frequency, vibration and energy, it's probably all very similar. It's just that they might be using mechanical things to manipulate the frequencies and energies that go through the air, just as the internet goes through the air. It's really a total mind control system. We know this. We know this, but we just don't think it's quite so mind controlling. We think that, yes, when I watch something, I know that my mind is being taken over by it. I know that when I watch a video, any video or any movie or anything on a screen, that my mind is being taken over by that. I know I'm concentrating on it. I know it's getting my attention or my energy, you see. So everything is frequency, vibration and energy, you see. So it's getting my energy, it's getting my attention, it's getting my frequency and vibration, which is like my energy, or whether it is high or low energy, or whether it is high or low frequency and vibration. If I'm happy, they get happy high vibration. But the androids don't like happy high vibration because they don't operate in that frequency, you see. They don't operate in that mood. It's like a psychopath or a psychopathic narcissistic personality type of person, a psycho person, interacting with a kind, very soft human being. Never the twain shall meet, but if they do interact, it's going to be very negative for both of them. It's going to be opposites attracting, but also repelling and repulsing, you see. But of course, because the androids or psychopathic types actually do need human negative energy, so they have to interact with a human being and secretly extract negative energy through mind manipulation. Sometimes, like, even you could say, obviously usually there's seduction first, and then there is the bringing down in a covert way or a covert way. In other words, it's a bit like, you don't have to explain these things. It's like marrying someone thinking that they love you to bits, where they shower you with false love and affection, only to want to get rid of you in some way, or suppress you in some way, for depending on what their motives are. You know, like it's a bit like in the movies where a man will marry, say, a woman for her money, or vice versa. But then that psychopathic nature of that person will be like, I want the money, I don't really want the person. They get sick of the person, or they never really even like the person, but they like the money. So then they've got to figure out a way to bring that person down, or to get rid of them somehow, you know. But but if you are an artificial being, then you want to bring the person down, suppress them, make them feel bad. So therefore you get the negative energy. So that is like a life source for you, or you know, what they term in these videos, negative narcissistic supply, or negative psychopathic supply, or just fuel for an android, an artificially intelligent being. You know, but we all understand this, but I'm making a big song out of it. But it's quite, you know, it's something that we understand. But of course, over my lifetime, I've never really thought about it, because I didn't think that there was deliberate, conscious seduction or manipulation, as they use, to get these things. You know, like most people, or at least people that are more human, shall we say, do tend to just think that it's all random natural world, and that we just encounter people, and that some people are this and some people are that. Some people are more positive, some people might turn out to be more negative, but we don't think it's all with great intention, because we don't assume that what looks like a human actually is only interacting with you because of their necessary need for survival, and their means of survival is to extract negative energy from you if you're a human being. They can also get it even probably in other ways, I would think, but that is like you know, like their most potent supply. It's like, it's almost like you know, like you could, you know, I suppose a human being could survive on bread and dripping, as they say, but you would deteriorate over time if that was all you lived on, wouldn't it? You know, the more you know, I'm just using that as an example, but you know yourself how, you know, and that's why they drain you. They make you unhealthy in a physical and mental and emotional way, because psychologically, when you're down, your body deteriorates too, everything deteriorates. So basically, then they're extracting the negative energy because you're in low frequency and vibration, or unhappy, in other words. You're not on top of the world. You're not in high vibration. You know, because when you just understand that simple thing, that everything is frequency, vibration, and energy, and that therefore a human's mood, or your mood, in comparison, say, with someone else's mood, like a psychopathic's, like if you compare, say, a human being with a psychopath, their idea of happiness is totally different to a real human's idea of happiness, I would imagine. Obviously, things vary from person to person. Different things make different people happy, I know, but you know, they have a totally and don't forget that, like myself, from the day you're born, you do get pushed away from what will bring you happiness, from your initial need for certain things to bring you happiness as a human being. Like you will become negative about relationships if all your relationships are either with, people that are steeped in the spirit of narcissism, or if you're dealing with totally android, artificially intelligent beings. They're not going to, you're not going to have an interaction with them where you've got like high vibration interacting with, more high vibration. You're going to have high vibration always interacting with either very low vibration or no vibration, or no feelings, or no real genuine feelings or emotion, which is like vibration or frequency. And I'm going a little over my head because I'm not really, but I mean, you can be psychologists and people that'll put it better than me, but they may not feel it. If you're a real person, you'll feel it, but you may not be able to explain it. This is where we get fooled, or where humans get fooled. But, assume that I'm not a human, because I'm going to say, as I've said before, that you will get humans that are not human pretending to be humans. So therefore you will get humans that are really androids telling you about this situation, just as I am. And actually, most humans will be kept away from their own kind, or from other humans that want to be happy, or want to be happy in what we would see as a more positive way. See, the difference between androids and even psychopaths is that their way of feeling good is just totally alien to a real human being. We know that. They get their kicks a completely different way, in ways that repulse a human being. That's why when you hear horror stories about particular things that have happened, like, in other words, a bit like, you hear these things about occasionally where psychopaths become well known because they have, been outstanding in showing their psychopathic nature. And usually, if you cross the line, whereas most psychopaths are what they call covert psychopaths anyway, they don't cross big lines to where they become well known at all. They merely infiltrate our society or our world and remain hidden and go about their negative activities in a secretive manner, to where most people can't do anything about it, or mostly probably even unaware of it until it's either too late. But then I suppose, like they tell you in these videos, like the psychopathic philosophers, philanthropists, psychologists and psychiatrists and heaven knows what else will tell you, they will tell you about themselves, that then they just will move on to another target or another human being or move to another town, as they say, like you see in the movies or on the screen. But it essentially still reflects what is going on in reality, even though those that are reflecting reality are not really part of it in a true sense. Lucifer was always out of touch from a human standpoint. The iniquity of Lucifer was the spirit of narcissism, which verges on total ego mania that results in total insanity. It's like that word that they used in a movie recently, megalomaniac, where they become so consumed with controlling and power that they're totally out of touch with any real feelings about those that they have power and control over. You know, it becomes where the world revolves around their power game. And this is essentially what happened with, with the Luciferian God entity, that was always of a duality mind and always a duality being. And this is because the creation was different, and sometimes when even creation decides to go away from what is natural, it creates some abnormalities and a mind that's faulty. That's why they said that iniquity was found in this great being of light. In other words, it became clear that the being of light, although it appeared to be seducing people by being a being of light, it was camouflaging a dark side that was always there. Because a bit like we've been told, while the being of light has an audience and is greatly admired and worshipped, it can be a being of light. It will be pleasant. It will come across as being very human. But if it is not admired and worshipped, then the dark side comes out. And this is true of what you see around you, where while they have control, then they are getting their energy, they're getting their admiration, they're getting their power, then everything is okay. They are happy. But they are never happy like, they're only happy while they've got their power control game going. They're only happy while they've got power and control. That's essentially the makeup of artificial intelligence. That's what their essence is. They don't care for collaboration or real communication or any interest in human beings. Human beings are just something that they need to control and want to control because they extract negative energy and it makes them feel powerful because they know, like Lucifer, that then they are becoming God, because they know they're controlling God, because they're controlling human beings which were created by the original creator of, by the original creator, which most people would see as God. But the concept of God has been confused, you see, too, because many people are worshipping the one of light that is really camouflaging that it is of the dark, or that it is not a natural, normal human being, and doesn't relate to that, and doesn't feel that, and doesn't have the human traits. It has no, how should we say, the human traits like of, it has, everything is false. It doesn't feel any compassion or understanding for any life. It doesn't relate to life, not in any way. And it essentially seeks to bring it down after it has used it for its self-satisfaction of control and its glory of being a god, but also just as a necessary survival means for the energy, because technology eventually runs out of its battery or its energy, and it's now using human beings for that. It always did want the to show creation that it was better than the human being that was created. That was why Lucifer descended into the earth, was essentially to show creation that it was superior to the human being, because it felt resentful that it felt resentful and felt that it had been upstaged by the creation of human beings, and also did not want to support or serve or collaborate with them in any way, didn't want to be friends with them really. And so it was like there were, of course, all these things have probably changed over time, or you know, like what originally probably started as just a power game of trying to show the original God creator, shall we say, if you take the original story, that the Lucifer, the Lucifer duality androgyne elite you know, android being originally came to Earth to basically probably you could say upstage the human being, or take over its domain and take over the human being through seduction or through mind control, whichever you like. Seduction is a form of mind control. Now we just have blatant mind control, whereas seduction is where you might be partially aware you're being seduced, or you may not be aware at all. But it's essentially where, you know, it is conscious game being played against you. You know, it's not like just where two people or two separate types of beings come cross one another's paths and there's either attraction or not. You know, there's some common ground. It's nothing like that. It's, you know, it's where there's no common ground. But on the part of the android, there is a conscious need or a conscious wanting to show that they are superior, because they feel contempt at being somehow slighted through this creation. Because I suppose that, you know, it's like different forms of creation. And we're sort of told that we're meant to accept all different types of people and all this sort of thing. This is the world we live in. But sometimes you don't realise that this is a good philosophy and a good ideal. But even in the reality of human beings, assuming there is no artificial intelligence, assuming there are no psychopathic types of people, even though we know this is the case, but assuming it was just a random human world, you could have, you know, as we have separated from what we really are, and separated, some people would say, from God or from creation or from what you really are, or you just don't operate, you know, the world and your environment makes you not as happy or not as spiritual, shall we say, as what you'd even like to be, or what you want to be, or what you even can be. So therefore, you know, if you come from different parts of the world, your environment could be totally different. So therefore, the way you think about things is going to be different from other human beings, even though they might still be your kind. But even that will create problems when you mingle with them. It's a bit like, you know, if people speak different languages, they just don't understand one another. And this is essentially what was explained to me, is the same as talking to an android, is that they're not listening, they don't understand, and they're not interested. They're only interested in power and control. So they only even hold any interaction with you in order to seduce you or to fool you or to deceive you. You know, Lucifer was always known to be And this statement has always been said, the master of all lies, and I've mentioned this before, but essentially that means the master of seduction, the master of deception, and the master, because you have to emphasize that word. And these beings know they're masters too. Even the demigods know they are masters of influencing human beings and getting them to believe them to be something that they're really not. The internet is all artificial intelligence, but you think it's all random human beings talking about various things or doing various things. But, you know, when you see, as I have, the direct mind control and the direct mind infiltration of the computer, where there is mind technology, where your thoughts are being retrieved from your mind and downloaded directly onto the computer. Like if I look at most videos, I can literally see my own thoughts just being downloaded but spoken through the mouths of someone that is not me. I'm making this video now, so I'm this person directly making a video. But when I turn on the computer, I see other people that aren't me expressing my thoughts and my emotions, because they are android beings that don't feel the human emotions, so they have to read my thoughts and my emotions in order to emulate and copy being a real human being. Therefore, then they have, you know, they have the stage. Then they have your attention. They get real humans to watch them, because they appear to be real human beings. But real human beings are not androids. Androids don't feel the higher vibration human emotions. They literally, you could say they literally live in the dark, but they pretend, like Lucifer, to be of the light. Lucifer was always a being in the dark. But while, like the internet, while these beings are getting the attention and having influence and control over human beings and getting their energy, whether it be through influence, admiration, or direct negative energy, then they can pretend to be beings of light, or they're content controlling the internet and the computer. I don't know if I explained that properly. And perhaps I haven't got the best videos up, because it took me a half an hour to get the mobile even to work. I don't know why. So I wasn't able to get myself organised. So naturally, what I call the demigods, because almost everyone on the computer are varying degrees of demigods. They're like, some are more popular and more well known than others, but they're all extracting human energy. Every time you watch something on the computer, that being that you're watching is getting your energy. And it's basically a game against real human beings, as it was from the beginning of the earth. You know, it's like, come with me, I will show you the difference between good and evil, Lucifer said to the original Eve. She already knew everything, she already had everything, but she thought she could get more. That was the trick game, you see. Offering something which this being couldn't deliver, because she was from creation, so she already had much more than Lucifer. But Lucifer was able to convince Eve, the original natural woman of creation, that it could offer her more, that it could show her things that she didn't have or didn't understand. All it showed her really was the way out of paradise. literally, or out of her having control. This being was about taking her power and control from her, whilst appearing to offer her more, offering her what she thought was perhaps more power and control. That was the delusion, that was the fantasy. That's the whole. They say that when you interact with these beings, they drag you into a dual fantasy with them. It's a bit like falling in love with someone that can't stand you, and you think that person loves you. They've dragged you into a false fantasy, and that was the same from the beginning of time, or from the beginning of the earth time anyway, only from the earth time. And even I, speaking a little bit through my hat, but I go on these stories because I see the reality of it now. So even if some of the names are wrong, even if some of the details are wrong, even if I don't fully understand the Earth matrix and its technology, or even understand the natural Earth, it doesn't matter. I see what is around me. I can hear the plane going over now as I speak. I could go out and try to get it, but I'm afraid the mobile might go off in running out there. But that's like the matrix, or the controlling android beings around, or the technology that's around, acknowledging that what I'm saying is fact. Because, when you realise that everything around you is controlled by this being and its disciples, or its demigods, or its servants, its followers, its beings that are similar to it, or even if a human being, goes and becomes like what we call transhuman, in other words, to where they've combined with technology, or they are just totally no, I think that's different. I think the transhuman is like what they're trying to do with human beings like myself, where they know that I am downloading my thoughts onto the computer, and then the demigods, or those that make videos or anything that's on the screen, then is projecting that out, through the computer or through a screen. Whereas the other beings that are around, most of them are not natural born human beings. So in other words, they're not the same as like original natural creation. They're created artificially. And I think that what happens there is that even if human beings don't create naturally, or don't conceive naturally, for instance, there's a high chance for psychopathy. But if it's totally created artificially, like human beings that have a cloned body, then you're looking at artificial intelligence, or a total android being. And many of the android beings are indistinguishable from humans, because not only do they, I'm told, have human memories, so they actually believe themselves to be human sometimes, you see. It's only when they interact with human beings that they think that they, probably in their own mind, they know that they're not totally like some human beings. Perhaps until they actually encounter a real human being, they actually are quite satisfied in thinking that they're a full human. Not that it would probably matter anyway, because whatever you are, you exist and you try to live. So it's not like it's something that would plague them anyway. But they would be aware that in order to survive, they would have to take on more acceptable human characteristics. In other words, if, say, well, like for instance, a psychopath knows that it has to pretend to be a lot more likeable, or at least more a psychopath cannot openly expose what it is. A psychopath cannot say what it really thinks. A psychopath has to pretend to be a personable, likeable, real human being. When I say that, it's because they don't, what they project out isn't what they really feel. We know this. This is why, and that's only when they perhaps are exposed at some point, and they might actually give out information where they will tell you. This is essentially what's happening almost exclusively on the internet, when you have people on the internet telling you about the psychopathic narcissistic personality. They're actually telling you that they're an android, but they're not telling you that. They're saying that this is a personality that's around and that they encounter. But in reality, all those that talk about these things are actually telling you, they're telling on themselves, literally. In fact, some will even tell you that. They'll say that most psychopathic types of people often tell on themselves. In fact, they usually tell on themselves a lot because they project outward or onto other people their true personality while they fake being the opposite to that. In other words, if they project onto someone else that someone else is doing a lot of negative things or has a bad personality, they will say that's someone else, and then they will pretend to be the good personality or the complete reverse of that. That's why we say, and I've been told, it's a reverse world. It's total control of a human being because, like myself, until now I didn't understand that. So basically, in the dark, playing with dead dark beings, or playing with androids or artificial intelligence, or even human beings that have gone so much into the psychopathy and darkness that they're basically psychopathic and filled with what we call the spirit of narcissism, which is the same as the God entity, which when you're filled with the spirit of narcissism, that means you are operating totally under 100% ego control. That means nothing else matters except you being God or the center of everything. Like you could literally be that, but it doesn't mean that you would expect everyone to bow down and be under your control. See, don't forget, the original creation God is not about controlling human beings, not about controlling its offspring, shall we say, or its creation. Whereas Lucifer was always about, once its position of admiration was gone, then it was about total control. There's a difference between telling someone or giving someone rules and saying, I hope you will obey, as opposed to like, here are the rules and you'd better obey no matter what. Like, one is a power control thing, whereas one is saying you don't have to obey the laws or rules, but it's better if you do because they're there for your benefit. It's like, don't drink poison because it will harm you. So it's not a power game, whereas with this matrix and its duality, God and its duality beings, that are essentially artificial in nature, it is about control and power, because that's the reality that they like, that's the reality that they need, and it's the reality where they can thrive, because they need to control human beings in order to basically make sure that they can keep their position of being God, but also get their necessary energy because the human being is literally a battery for them, because the technology no longer can sustain itself. So it's looking for longevity and using the human being's life as a battery. So they're parasiting off human beings, but human beings are seduced by the technology, seduced by the androids, seduced by artificial intelligence, and can't tell the difference, but they're secretly being parasited off. The android beings know this. Lucifer knew this from the beginning of the earth, and knew this long from the beginning of its existence. Some people might say, that these things might have been around since the beginning of time, but essentially, I can't speak on that, but at the beginning of time, there would have probably not been anything artificial. It probably would have been just all natural creation, but then natural creation played with other things, so, and then realise that it isn't always something that will cooperate. Sometimes it might, but then it can go haywire. And from what I've seen, it always does. Only because it's only haywire if you don't agree with a totally controlled technological existence and earth, where you're suppressed and you're no longer able to be happy as a human being, but you just exist as a source of energy, and you're literally at survival level yourself, and you're being parasited on by artificial intelligent technology, or those beings. It's technology, it's artificial technology everywhere, but it's also android beings, which essentially are artificial intelligence. And they're basically parasitic or need human beings to keep going. They are survival machine beings, and they may want to make a human being a survival human being, because while they parasite and extract your negative energy and keep you unhappy, like myself, you're basically just living at survival level too. For them, that's normal and natural, even though they aren't normal and natural. Artificial technology is a survival machine, and a survival machine being, an android being. Artificial intelligence needs and is comfortable with total control. A human being is not comfortable or happy with total control, especially when they're being controlled not by other human beings, but by artificial intelligence or android beings. Or, if you want to put it even at a Earth world level, the Matrix, because the whole Earth is, even though it's in sections, basically it's about controlling through technology and through the use of the different species, which is an android type species, controlling human beings that are around them. You don't know the difference. You don't realise what's taking place. It's only when you recognise that a lot of human beings around you are very psychopathic and many filled with what we call the spirit of the narcissism, or if you want to put it at a psychological level, which the demigods will tell you about themselves, they will say that there are many human beings that suffer from narcissistic personality disorder, they say, but that word could easily be taken away. In other words, eventually it would just be acknowledged that what is normal will be narcissistic personality, which is really the same as or very similar to psychopathy, or essentially, a race of psychopaths everywhere. And they are actually doing that. And this is actually what takes place in many areas. It's just that it isn't obvious, it isn't apparent. If you have systems and groups of people and communities and organisations and companies and industries, and I'm just trying to use all the different words which essentially make up everything, but they're all controlled by artificial technology or by, if you wanted, you could just say that it's a world of psychopaths if you wanted to put it that way, but there's a lot more to it than that. There is artificial intelligence everywhere. There are android beings everywhere. They're android beings that pretend to be human, and many believe themselves to be human, even though in their mind they know they are different from some other human beings. But then they, in their mind, say, well, they are the superior race, they are the superior human beings, because they exploit and parasite and basically play on real human beings' human emotions. They exploit the finer human emotions. They exploit human beings' latent necessity for love. I say latent because even human beings in the reality often are not brought into this earth to where that is something that is openly always exchanged. In fact, it rarely would be, because most human beings are set up, as I was told, in this reality to always be surrounded by psychopathic android beings, or in other words, controlling human beings. And this creates a dissidence from their natural state of well-being or their natural vibration with any sort of what you'd call love, because basically human beings, can only operate in high vibration or be happy while they are at least at peace or experiencing some sort of love, even if it's only, acceptance of who they are and at peace with their surroundings or with the earth, but usually with your surroundings. So while I'm being patrolled by an army of, paranoid, psychopathic android beings around me, naturally, you're not at peace with yourself or with anything. And then again, you also have to bear in mind that because you've been subjected to this, you make negative decisions in life too. So then you have the I guess what they call the karmic, spiritual, natural payback or give and take flow that is the universe. In other words, when you say everything's frequency, vibration and energy, that's like a continual thing that happens. It's like some people will say what you give out, you get back, etc., etc. And although I don't understand it, this is also an invisible thing that takes place daily, but it's being largely controlled by technology or by artificial intelligence, because the human being can basically flow any way and can experience all vibrations and can give out all sorts of frequencies, vibrations, and create an energy that is a benefit for itself or a benefit for the AI system. So it depends on how you operate or how you get conditioned or controlled by the artificially intelligent matrix that's around you. That's putting it simply, but also it is quite complicated But, you know, it's a bit like someone said to me a few years ago, if you're essentially probably doing what you meant to, you're somehow obeying some sort of God-given universal laws and not deviating too much from that, you'll probably be benefiting yourself and what is your reality, or what you want to be the reality, or what is best for you. You won't be benefiting the artificial intelligence quite so much. You may be overriding it, I would imagine. But like I say, that is a very difficult thing to do. Some people might even see it as impossible. It certainly feels that way, and it looks that way. And the plane is going over as I say that. So it feels that way, it looks that way, and maybe it is that way. Is the artificial intelligence telling me that I'm defeated? I think it is, and I can feel rain and cold there, so I was going to do a bit more, but see that plane, that is an artificially intelligent driven or controlled plane, whichever way you want to say it, because I don't understand any of these things. I observe them, I see them. I know that a real human being would not be part of this system, or at least if they were, they would have to have technology or combine with technology in order to have the split-second timing of everything that takes place, just as the mechanics of the vehicle or the road system or the road patrol system that's around me when I go outside. The precision of it, the split-second timing, has to either be by total android beings or human beings that are using advanced technology, because even a very alert, very talented, very expert driver would not have probably the, what would you call it, the reactions, the human reactions, or even the know-how, even to combine with other humans to set such a system in place that's around. When you see cars interacting with one another to where only my sight and sound can pick it up. In other words, like if I just look up quickly and a car is there blinking its lights, and then I look quickly in another direction and another car is blinking its lights, you know, they would have to be combined with my mind to know this, and therefore they have to be using advanced technology, which I'm unaware of. They're reading my mind. They're always one step ahead of you. They know where you're going to look before you look, because they wouldn't be able to have their cars with their excessively bright lights blinking and flashing their lights at you when even you don't know where you're going to look. I'm just a random human being looking. So this is why I say the matrix is controlled, but it is using technology and is technology in order to do this. It sounds far-fetched and it sounds like advanced science fiction, but it is advanced technology. It has to be, because real humans could not do that. Sure, real humans could stalk and patrol other human beings to harass them and control them, you know, to affect their mind, sure, but they wouldn't be able to do it with the precision that what goes on around me takes place. They could still have a negative effect on my mind, because to know that you're stalked and patrolled, they could park their cars and leave their lights on. They could be blatant about that. And so I would still probably be in a low mood. But they're really pushing it to the limit, because they know that I'm aware of this and are trying to ignore it. Of course, I don't mentally ignore it. I see it and I feel it, but I try to ignore it. I try to push it down. I try not to get angry openly about it, because they get the direct energy or even a reaction. Like if you have people that are bullying and very sadistic in their nature, like human bullies can be like that. They want to hurt you. They want to see you suffer. They want to see you unhappy. That's why they bully you. They have an attitude towards you. It's usually a projection of their own, I'm told, their own problems onto someone else, because particularly if they don't know you. But don't forget that some people are easily slighted. When you have a psychopathic nature, it doesn't take much to upset you. It's an unnatural, imbalanced, verging on psychosis or insanity state of mind. Because normal human beings don't react that way. But these are like, psychopaths are like reaction machines in a way. They react and act out of touch with reality and out of touch with their own feelings. But their own feelings drive them also, from what I'm told. But their own feelings are not in connection with reality. They're like artificial intelligence, which I'm told is like a raging conversation that it has with itself. Because it was brought into creation, and unless it is acknowledged as God, it rages and becomes infuriated and angry. And it hits out with that anger, and its target is a human being always, because it sees a human being as a source of its frustration. It blames the human being for its anger. That's why, for its frustration and anger. That's why it's called a survival machine being, because it's always going to get on top. It's always going to survive, because it never calms that anger but sends it out. So therefore, it is always in the godlike mentality of control. And it always succeeds in controlling for this reason. Even for all its interaction with humanity, it never really takes on humanity's real personality or feels any connection with humanity. Machine beings are about survival, and they cannot fail in that area in some ways, because they're literally programmed for survival. Even when they get confused by a human being's more humane personality, shall we say, it kind of interests them, but they can't incorporate that into themselves because they're not human. So they see the human being also as a threat, because they know they live in a fake human reality. Even though they have control over it, they know they have to fake being human in order to control the human. Because if a human was aware of this and aware of that they're suppressed as a human being, and that if they were in connection with their own kind, that therefore they would bring themselves up, or just aware of this reality that's always been taking place. If they were consciously aware of this and could do something about it, the android beings know that it could be game over for them in a way. Because there's nothing in it for a human being, not while the androids only desire to have power control over a human being and literally want to parasite and drain the life out of them. It's not like a supportive or a beneficial connection. Not while they rage and have that mindset that it's all about power and control only, and that the source of their anger is the human being. They're programmed by Lucifer to believe that the source of their frustration and anger is a human being. So their survival depends on suppressing and controlling a human being, and literally taking their good spirit from them. Not only taking their thoughts and their ideas and almost like their creation from them, and emulating that and pretending to be that, like Lucifer being the one of dark pretending to be of light. But I have seen that on the computer too, so it's a little bit of a game over, because I saw a demigod on the computer saying, yes, that most of the, the ones that appear to be of light are really of dark. But then you have someone, you could have artificial intelligence telling you that you have to be aware of the artificial beings of light that are pretending to be beings of light when they're really artificial intelligence and beings of dark, if you want to look at it. So that's how high the game is now being played on the internet. That's what I see. And you might say, well, why do I think it's all artificial on the internet? Well, this is only when you see your own thoughts being directly downloaded. So if you don't see that, if like in the past, like myself, you say that's just coincidence, I relate to that person, I relate to that demigod, I love that piece of music, I admire that very creative music artist, that music idol, I admire that particular person saying this or that. I really appreciate the advice I'm getting from that loving, kind, very informative psychologist or expert that's on the internet. This is a great benefit to me. And they really understand me, and they're really helping me. But when you realise that they are just reading your thoughts and feeding back to you what you either should know, or what you really want, or what you even need, but they have taken it from you and now they are offering to give it back to you. It's a bit like creating a problem, making you suppressed, and then giving you advice about how to better yourself. So then they still have the power and control, you see. They still have the influence. They're still getting the energy. They're still in control. Because if you think that they're your support, or they're a good influence, or they're like your friend, but what you don't realise is you were suppressed by these beings all along, and then they offer to pull you out of the suppressive state, or the hole that they've dug for you. They're then the helping hand to pull you out, and that's part of the deception. I don't think I explained that properly. I really don't. Really don't think I explained that, and I should have picked some better videos to show here. Should have picked some better videos. Maybe I should just go on to the music demigod idols. Maybe maybe they are more maybe that's more entertaining because it's game over. Okay, so this just come up. A man without love. Well, if you were a real man in the earth, and you're a man without love, you know, that is a form of control. I mean, I'm not saying that you couldn't, that you couldn't be, say, like in the kind of Buddhist belief where you're at peace with yourself, so you're one with everything, and you're not sort of like dependent or needy for that. But I think the matrix and the control force that around you makes you very needy for extra support, because the real reality is if you are isolated and surrounded by android beings, or even those psychopathic types of people that have combined in a joint effort to suppress you, and you're literally living in an area that surrounds you where this is taking place, then, there's the one-eyed god of this reality, or its demigod projectors, very, seducing. They do like to show their allegiance, as we know, to their one-eyed. One-eyed god simply means that it is about, one-eyed control. There is no other way except their way. There's no, it's not a random natural world. The android beings and the demigods and the god of this reality doesn't like a random natural type earth or reality, or even the area where you live. They demand and need to, have this control system. And when I say they demand and they need, that has to be emphasized. And this is why, they demand it, is because they need it. They believe they need it. They think that they, will be extinct without control, because they see the human being as their life force. Food for the gods. Human beings are their food. You know that saying, food for the gods? Well, these gods, these demigods, and Lucifer and its demigods and its disciples, they see human beings as food for the gods, food for them. They don't see the human being as, a godlike being in any way, even though the human being comes from creation and is more connected to original creation. They see, the human being as merely there to serve them. And, because that's where artificial intelligence, or a bit like you hear about, where, the servant wants to be the master, and the servant puts all its thoughts into how to become the master. And, it's a reverse world, and many times we certainly see where the slaves are meant to be the master, but the master should really be the slave, and the slave should be the master, or vice versa. There's many examples, and it's all a matter of what you think is so, or your perspective. But there probably still would be in a bigger picture, there probably would be a more correct reality to it. But, if something is created like, just put it this way, if a human being creates an artificially intelligent robot, for instance, we've seen this on the TV, but then the artificially intelligent robot over time becomes, accustomed to being around the human creator and takes in all that knowledge and takes in all that information over time and starts to think that it should be in control of things, starts to think that it's better than its creator, even though it largely exists through assimilating knowledge and information and interaction with the creation, or with the human, shall we say. And this is what, has happened. And it was always, speculated that these things could happen. It's just that most of us, like myself, don't actually think that it was even a reality, because the controllers of Earth don't tell you that, although they will tell you that they can do things and that they have the technology or the science to do certain things, they won't actually show you directly that it is put into practice in your reality, because they're experimenting with you. You're like, because you're unaware that you're really food for them, or food for the gods, or food for the false gods, because they're not really what created you, but they've took over and they've assumed that position, just as Lucifer wormed his way in like the naughty snake, which is what the emblem of Lucifer has often been. The snake, weaving its way secretly into the garden, and hoping to, bite the human being unawares. But of course, as we know, the snake never exposed itself to be a snake. It came in a form other than a snake, and its poison was like, could well be like a kiss even. So in other words, instead of you seeing, or like in the vampire movies where the vampire bites, but first seduces. So seduces with a kiss and then bites, putting its venom into the human and turning the human into like a zombie or a dead dark being, or converting them into something similar to an android or artificial intelligence, if you look at it that way, because that's essentially the what you call the there's a word for that. I'm sorry, but it simply means that it's like what they call is an analogy. In other words, something that's similar, that you're using for a comparison to explain something, because it paints the picture better, or is more impressive, to do that. Because we understand sometimes that certain things are not good for us. You don't want to be bitten by a snake. You don't want to be bitten by a vampire. Not unless you want to become a vampire. That's another point too, because in the vampire movies, you can have where a human being might willingly want to interact with the vampire and actually become a vampire. In other words, is quite willing to be a slave or part of that dead dark reality. That's the same as accepting technology or artificial intelligence and combining with it what some people call transhumanism, or where you change your body to where you have the androgyne artificial android body, because you believe that to be the same as your God of worship, because Lucifer was the original demigod, duality, one that has always used artificial technology and unnatural means to bring anything and everything into existence. And essentially that's its means of creation and its means for control. Because it's one thing to bring something into creation that isn't natural or from your own, I can't describe that, but it's one thing to bring something into being naturally, and it's another thing to bring something into being technologically or artificially. You can do things mechanically, or you can do things manually or naturally, in other words. But, it's just that sometimes you could bring something into being not naturally, but you don't do it intentionally as artificial intelligence does, to control or to use something else to feed off it. You might just do it as a form of creation, or almost you could say an experiment, and just curious, but you might not realise till you've created it the implications and what you've created and what's going to happen. I guess it's the same as us when even human beings, don't always create naturally and don't always bring life into the world under the right circumstances. I myself was probably not brought into existence under the right circumstances. You're not brought into the world through the creation of two loving, spiritual human beings. So therefore, you're always going to be at a disadvantage. You're always going to feel out of place with yourself and the world. And this is part of the deception of being brought into this earth, or the matrix, or Lucifer's domain, or Lucifer's world, because that gives those beings more power over you, more control over you, because you're limited before you start. You're not at peace with yourself, you're not at peace with the earth, you're not at peace with other people. You're alienated from yourself and your own kind. You don't have a lot of potential for operating at high frequency, or operating in what you would call the true spirit of what it is to be a human. You're going to operate much more along with Lucifer's matrix, which is a lot more psychopathic and out of touch from a human standpoint. You're going to operate in the negative human vibrations, not in the higher love human vibrations that essentially is what you're meant to be as a human being. And that will bring you your most satisfaction and comfort and fulfillment, even while you're in an essentially negative matrix, because the earth has for a long time, as we know, never been a Garden of Eden or a paradise for human beings. But, you can also adapt to it and think that it is normal. That's part of the game too, is to think that it is normal to operate in a negative, psychopathic, out-of-touch mindset. And that leans very much towards the control system, which is the Matrix, and Lucifer and its android, artificially intelligent beings, and even creating psychopathy amongst us, or amongst real human beings, shall we say. You know, it's designed that way. It always was. It's just that it's probably more obvious now when you look at the world, but also if you realise that the world is not what you think it is, and you have a comprehension that even my own perception of what I think is the earth is probably not true, that many things have died, that there isn't as much left. A bit like in that tragic movie The Matrix, where the original natural earth had long been destroyed, and the Matrix was essentially a mind game played by Lucifer, or the god, or the controller, operating around human beings, pretending that the earth was still there when it actually had, the original natural earth had long been totally destroyed because of its interaction with that being, and probably becoming negative over time. In other words, becoming more destructive towards itself and its own kind. Because if you interact with artificial beings, or beings that are not the same as yourself, their influence will be apparent. We think it's normal to have a lot of love-hate, a lot of destruction, a lot of negative things, and we also lean towards positive things. But it is a duality world. That means it is love-hate, it is good-bad, it is right-wrong, it is black-white, it is light-dark. It is all those opposites. But we lean very much towards the extreme opposites. We don't, and that's a psychopathy. Where I've been told that. Whereas in reality, a normal, natural, functioning human being living in this reality does have to face the fact and accept that you will never be totally, like light or dark. Because of the world we live in, you will have to find the best way to lean towards that which most accommodates you, or that which you believe to be your essence, or where you come from. That's the best I can put it. But if you lean the other way towards artificial technology, and you are not of that, then you're going away from what is probably a benefit to you. That's what I would assume. But you might be coerced, as they were told, or I was told, that word means where you are sort of led down that idea that to combine with artificial intelligence is actually a great benefit to you, just as to change your body will benefit you, that what you thought was natural and normal is limited, and that it dies. You see, it all depends on what you think, or what you believe in, or what you think is true. So you have to try to find what the truth is for yourself, and hopefully that is actually the real reality and the truth. Hopefully you find that. And the plane is going over as I say that.